Making sure that the work is equal, making sure that everyone's doing their fair share. That's a very hard thing. Obviously, using some kind of visual display, you were talking about Jira, is a great way to see how everything is progressing, keeping up to date with the rest of your coworkers. Is there any other ways you guys find that you make sure you're handling the work equally?
This definitely relates more to, like, let's say if I'm working with another team, right? Especially a larger group, right? One of the things that I usually try to do is I always identify people's strengths, right? I would never give work to somebody who I know might not be able to perform as adequately as someone else. So I think everybody has their own strengths, right? I mean, I think everyone is good at least something, right? So a lot of the times what I'll do is sort of identifying those things, and then depending on, like, for example, like when I was doing my master's, there was a project we were working on. It was like a case study for a website, I believe, and I specifically chose for, I think, 3, including myself, people to do a lot of the writing, a lot of the research. But then I chose one specific person who is very visual to create a diagram, a context diagram of the way our website would flow. So by doing that, he killed it. He did a really good job on it, and better than any one of us could have done, right? And because he was dedicating all his time to the one thing. And realistically speaking, we all knew that we could handle the workload equally. We can all do our own part. We capitalize off our strengths. And even though some, like, for example, that one team member, although he didn't do any writing, the amount that he put in for the visual was more than enough, right?
Feel free to relate this to even animation, because I know that's a real big thing. Working with leads, like, you're like, lead's just doing like major poses. No, man, they burn out like 1 million. So yeah.
Yeah, so generally speaking, what I'll try to do is I like to try to get a sense of, it depends on the project. So if it's like a freelance project, needs to get done quickly, I'll identify this guy's good at backgrounds, this person's good at modeling, this guy's good at rigging, this person's good at animation. We'll divvy up the tasks, and each person will have a clear expectation. You're doing this much work, and you're getting compensated this much for it, right? When it's kind of like a passion project or internally developed project, then it's a little bit different. You'll want to, I try, wherever possible, to sit down with people at the beginning and figure out, what's your big goal? What's your big passion? What do you, ultimately, what do you want to be able to do? And if possible, from that, I try to kind of figure out what we can do that aligns with their passion, their overall big goal, something that kind of leads them closer to that, that they also have a, aptitude for, that can also help our project. And sometimes it'll be a case where there's no good fit, and I'll just be like, there's no fit really, and if I can, I'll find some aspect of a project that I can contribute on. If it's just they really, really want an opportunity to learn and grow. Sometimes we'll find like, maybe make some simple assets that we could potentially use here or here or here. And it's really more so just for them to kind of get into a project, work with people who are a little more experienced, and develop a little bit of momentum, sense of belonging, and an opportunity to grow and improve their work. Right. In some cases, we may or may not use the work if it doesn't fit in the end. But I think ultimately, I try to look for those win-win situations where people are just as motivated to do the work as it would be helpful for our project. Beyond that, you always find situations where a person is just, unless they're with you full time, if they're off on their own, like, who knows what they're doing, right? and you find out pretty quickly who you can work with and who you can't, right? And generally speaking, the people who are independent enough and proactive enough to do their own stuff, you keep working with them, right? And you find new opportunities, you find like new ways to kind of to collaborate. And the other people, they go on and they do their own stuff, right? So they figure out some other thing that they're probably ultimately more passionate about, right? So that's kind of how it has borne out in the past. But if it's a commission or a freelance project and I know it needs to get done, try to work with people who I've worked with before, who are reliable, and I know they're going to kind of take care of business. So there's no perfect solution. Yeah.
That's actually a really big thing. I'm always trying to tell my students that. A lot of the jobs I'm getting nowadays are just old buddies are like, can you get this stuff done? Yeah, toss it over to me. Collaborating, socializing, and making sure you're really good to work with is a really big component of working in this industry, which is the theme of this week. All right. So that also leads into motivating each other. This could be events. This could just be your day-to-day rituals. Are there ways that you try to motivate yourself or motivate others within the environments? If you guys, so one of my favorite things that we ever did was we went to the ballroom downtown Toronto, and we just went bowling together. There's another place, and I forget the name of it. It's a ping pong bar where the entire time you're just ordering drinks and playing ping pong. Once again, any outings or kind of things that you guys do to motivate each other or stay as a team?
This one's more of a tricky question because, Gavin and I are collaborating, but also very, very independent, working on our own projects. But what I will say is, when I do have a chance to speak to Gavin for a long period of time, it's sort of like a free-flowing conversation, And one of the things that I learned about since meeting Gavin is sort of like we both have our own, I guess, unique experiences when it comes to understanding maybe some of the struggles in life or, working hard towards something, And I think that's one of the main things is, and I was actually just talking to this with Gavin today before we had this interview is just sort of understanding, like, in order if you really want to do something in life, if you really want to get somewhere, like it's not really waiting for it to happen or waiting for somebody to hand it to you. Like you do have to put in your own level of work. And I sort of, I guess, equate that to almost like a recipe for success. I don't know if this has been said before, but my sort of recipe is like a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck. So by working harder, right, it's almost like winning lottery tickets or something, right? You buy more lottery tickets and you might get lucky. You always have to be in the right place at the right time. But by networking and doing more events kind of thing, it's a lot about, working hard and getting that little bit of luck. And I think Gavin, he definitely understands that. We understand that very, very well. And again, coming back from our backgrounds is we have unique experiences, but we both correlate in that sense. So I think we do, a lot of the times motivate each other from just talking about experiences that we've had in life, even if it does not relate to development or something that's professionally related. And those are the people that you want to keep working with, right?
Really, really interesting question. I do a lot of things to try to keep myself motivated, sometimes more successfully than other times, right? But I listen to like a lot of audiobooks, books on like motivation and hacking our our motivation and things like that. There's one good book I listened to recently. I forget what it was called, but it's very scientific. It's based on a lot of like our academic research on how we are motivated and how to kind of change your way of doing things in order to kind of push yourself forward, right? So I found that there are certain situations where it's easy to get motivated. It's a really glamorous project, or it's like really something that you're interested in. But then there's a lot of times when you can't even sense that you're progressing forward. You feel like you're not moving, right? And that's kind of when things kind of get the hardest to continue, right? So I guess I've come to the realization that when you stay with something, the natural way of things is for them to ultimately come to fruition or to get done. And the challenge is sticking with it long enough, right? So with that in the back of my head, like I'm able to kind of just keep moving forward. And in the short term, sometimes it feels like you're not making any progress. But when you look back a year or 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you're like, wow, man, I can't believe how far I've gone, right? And then that thing you're looking at that you want to do next, it's like, how the heck am I ever going to do that? And sometimes you have that self-doubt, right? You're like, will I ever get there? Will I, be able to progress? And, ultimately you have to kind of look back at when I wanted to do this thing, or like for me, when I wanted to get into animation school, it wasn't a sure thing, right? It was a long shot, but I applied myself, I worked hard, and I was able to do it, right? When I wanted to get better at basketball and make the basketball team, same thing. And I think once you learn that you can learn and grow and do well at one thing, you figure you can apply that to other things as well, right? So the challenge for me now is I've never like independently made a video game, right? And I'm not a coder by trade. But I had to embrace that I will learn the things that I don't know how to do. And again, like I said before, I hope people come along who are better than me at this thing, and that has been the case, thankfully. But I had to be willing to address the thing that I was weak at, if I really wanted to kind of progress forward and get to that goal, right? And ultimately, the crazy part is I know I will get there. And when I get there, I'll think of another thing that, I want to do this now. You know what I mean? And then it's going to be a matter of like, I'll be starting at the very bottom again. And like, how do I kind of move forward? How do I move forward? I think the biggest things for me is like getting good at one thing and then being willing and able to give that up, let go of it, and embrace something that you're not good at yet, right? And having the faith and confidence that if you apply yourself and you keep at it, you will eventually grow in that area too. So listening to biographies of people who have done crazy things is really helpful. Sometimes I'll listen to like Hall of Fame speeches, of athletes or whatever. I listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was like super strong everywhere, right? But his calves were weak. So what he did is he wore tracksuits and cut off the bottom half of his pants. So all you could see was his calves, right? So he has jacked everywhere with his tiny calves, right? So all he showed the world was his tiny calves. So he's motivated, like, let me work on those calves. Let me get stronger there. And then that book I mentioned before, that I forget what it's called, but it's how to kind of hack into your motivation. One of the things that they said is if you can make your progress visible, if you can kind of take that big thing, break it down into small pieces so you can actually see that, I'm actually moving forward, that's a huge motivator, right? And that kind of allows you to keep going and keep progressing as you go. And the other thing is working with other people, collaborating with people like Michael or other people that I've worked with in my team. When we come together and produce work, it's really motivating, and then to get it in front of people and see their response to it, it's really empowering and motivating. So those are the kinds of things that we do, but it's an ongoing struggle, and it's constantly, you do face those moments of self-doubt, and questioning, can I do this? Will I ever do this? It's pointless. And then you just have to find a way to keep going.
We're going to talk about it's like least favorite and most favorite. So let's start off with least favorite part about working on a team. You don't have to name names. He's in the room. No.
I think I don't know, when it comes to the least favorite part is, I guess, coordinating schedules. Like, I understand there's so many people who have their own schedule. They have and they're trying to they're working at their own pace, kind of thing. And I guess that's one of the, for me, like when I'm working on a large team, it's, as understanding as I am, it's sometimes frustrating. Like I definitely like to, I'm quite organized, right? And it's it can be a little bit frustrating to manage people, I guess, like, again, everybody has their own agenda and stuff. And, but that's another thing I do too. As a, working as a project coordinator is I try to identify, because they're, in my personal opinion, especially when you're working with a really big team, unless you've specifically chosen all of those people, there will most likely be at least one of those people who might be a weak link. Okay. And that weak link needs to be identified, right? If they're going to be working with you on the project, and you have to have a contingency plan for that. Like, for example, when I was working a lot or doing a lot of my projects in university or my master's, if I were to identify one of those people, then I would make sure that I give them a part that I know I could write or do in like a very short amount of time in case I needed to. So, but the best part is when you, I guess, mesh your ideas, right? When somebody comes up with an idea that I've never thought of before, I think, and Gavin was talking about that too when it comes to motivation. That's like really inspiring, to think for somebody to sort of come up to me, and again, like, I'm thinking of things all the time, trying to be more creative and stuff. And when somebody comes up to me and in a second, I actually, met somebody, I guess last year when I was doing another event like this, and he was like, in relation to the project that I was making, he was like, oh, you should do something like this. Never occurred to me before, but it was such a good idea. And I was like, these are the guys that you got to keep close. These are the people that you got to keep close, because there's nothing, I guess, more rewarding or better than when you're working on a team to come up with or mesh on both your interests to create a new idea that maybe none of you would have come up with before.
So again, the least favorite thing of working in a team is sometimes when you're not able to kind of handpick the people that you're working with. I guess the best is to relay an experience I had. I got an opportunity as an art director on an animation show a few years ago. Really, really great opportunity. But I found out there's a lot of politics that go along with this, right? And it was challenging because I was replacing somebody. The vision of the show had already been established. I was trying to find my place and find my voice, and I found that it was a struggle to implement my vision, into what I wanted to do for the project. There's a lot of pushback, from senior people in the team, and it was just it was frustrating to some degree. And I think that was kind of the main piece. When you have this vision and you're excited about it, and you find like, oh, we can't do it, or we're not going to do it, because X, Y, or Z or whatever, right? And then expecting in that role as an art director that, you can speak to these things and make these choices and make these decisions. I think that was probably the most frustrating. I guess the politics or the resistance, the pushback, for me. So, and my favorite. So my favorite thing about working with other people is just like is kind of like what Michael mentioned before, is just that spontaneous kind of idea generation. That cross-pollination that happens, that the way that one guy's idea will trigger another girl's idea, and then you come up with this new thing that you never would have thought of or considered, and then each of you can kind of work hard and for a few days or whatever, or a few months or whatever, and then put your pieces together, and you have this really, really amazing thing that one person couldn't have done by themselves, right? So I think ultimately that for me is the most interesting thing. I think also with like methodologies like Scrum or Agile development, I think it lends itself to that. And I found in an animation studio when I was art directing, that's something that they don't do at all. And it was I think to some degree you could, but
Park guys can. I feel.
but at least even just in terms of communication, finding out what each person is working on at each time, and making sure that if somebody needs something from someone else, you can find that out sooner than later. Those are the kinds of things that I think they could benefit from in an animation studio. But in a game development studio or in a software development pipeline, I think it's a little bit easier to kind of quickly iterate and build off of each other's ideas. And I think it's more built into the process. And I don't know if that's why, but I find myself very drawn to interactive development, potentially for those reasons. So, yeah.